Good morning. I'm Steve Horton, Assistant Superintendent for the Okaloosa County School District in charge of operational services. And I want to thank you and welcome you back to the 2020-21 school year. I know we're poised for a great school year. What I'd like to do today is spend some time talking to you about your building and your classroom. Primarily, your school has spent much time this summer developing plans to ensure a safe return for both staff and students. At this time, we'll discuss a few of the things that are going on in your school, and I'm sure you'll also have discussions with your fellow teachers, staff members, ed support professionals, and administrators in trying to make our schools as safe as they can possibly be for a return of our students. It's important for us to understand that each of us has a critical role in redefining our school environment this fall. We all know that classrooms, hallways, and cafeterias, buses will not look the same that they did last January and February. So it's important for all of us to understand and embrace the responsibility we have to make students safe in our school buildings. We're all asked to do a little bit more this fall. It's important. We believe that students learn best in our school buildings and can be supported both academically and in a social emotional way. So we all have an obligation and a challenge to make this environment as safe as it can be. Getting ready for the school year is a process. Teachers, ed support professionals, and school administrators have all been going above and beyond to prepare for the start of school. And students and employees of Okaloosa County will be better for it. Starting school safely means a lot of different things. The checklist that we worked with principals on this summer talked about how to educate your school family, how to properly arrive to the school at the beginning of the day, what it'll look like when parents drop their students off and buses drop students off at the school, what kind of signage will exist in the school to help educate students and staff on appropriate ways to interact. What will the supplies be in our classrooms? Superintendent Chambers has put out a lot of information this summer about PPE, masks, barriers, cleaning supplies, and so we'll go over a lot of those in this presentation. What do classroom setups look like? I know because I've been in schools this summer, lots of teachers have been up in their classrooms all summer planning the best way to recreate their classrooms to provide for social distancing and great learning opportunities and environments for students. Isolation space. When or if we have a situation with a student or a staff member becoming ill, what to do with them. And our Student Services Department, with Terry Schroeder as the program director, has done a great job of providing information, and you will see in other trainings today specific information about events where students may or may not have symptoms and staff as well. What do our hallways look like? What do our locker spaces look like? How do we get kids to transition from one place to another safely? You know your buildings and your principals know your buildings as well as anybody. And so each school, because they're different, have been tasked with developing plans to help limit the movement of students. And when students do need to move, doing it in a safe, responsible way. Our cafeterias, what will they look like? Again, we've done a lot of things to spread out where students have the ability to eat lunch. We've lengthened the time in which students eat lunch. And so some schools that might have had 2 or 3 lunch waves now have 4. And so there are lots of opportunities for us to limit the number of students that eat together. And we'll see that play out in our cafeterias this fall. Media centers, there are lots of opportunities still appropriately done for our media centers to be used. And of course, we'll talk about the cleaning and disinfecting piece of that, but it is an important resource in a lot of our schools. Maintenance requests. It's always important that we try to handle all of our maintenance requests as quickly as we possibly can. We will pay particular attention this year to maintenance requests that deal with HVAC, so we can make sure our air circulation is appropriate, and anything else that involves student safety in relation to COVID-19. And our custodial staff. I would be remiss if I did not highlight the work that our custodial staff will be doing, has been doing this summer, and will do this fall to help keep our school environments clean and disinfected. Every day, at the end of the day, when our students and teachers leave the building, our custodial staff will be disinfecting every classroom and every desktop surface, all of the frequently touched surfaces, door handles, restroom areas, water fountains. Those will be done at the end of every day so that you can come back to the school the next morning and know that your facility has been disinfected. And I greatly appreciate the work of the custodial staff and all school staffs in helping to make that happen. One of the most important things that we can do in the first week of school is to help educate our school family. Right now, and rightly so, parents are nervous. Students might be nervous about coming back to school and what that will entail. I think it's very important in the messaging that we put out at the district level, but more importantly, the school level, because that's who the parents and students listen to, that we provide them with all of the information we can about what to do and what to expect when they get to school. Your school has put together a video that is being shared out with parents and students that highlights some of the practices that you will undergo during your school day to help keep students safe. Also, newsletters, website, social media, great things that are going on in the school will continue to happen this fall. We'll all highlight those. It's important, and it goes often without being said, to teach the importance of regular hand washing throughout the day, at least 20 seconds. And it's important that schools carve out time to allow students and staff to do that. Clearly, in a school environment, social distancing has been a point of discussion. It's understood that in situations involving schools, social distancing is very difficult to maintain at all times. There will be times when students can be stationed 6 feet apart from each other, but there will be times where it's not possible. It's still a practice that we need to promote and encourage as it relates to how we work with students in our hallways, how we work with students in our classrooms, and creating opportunities for them to work and move about the building, but also keeping in mind social distancing. We'll also be educating on the proper use of face coverings. So again, an important piece that I think at the school level, schools have taken great initiative to make sure that that happens. As you know, we'll be securing or have secured face coverings for all of our students and staff, and we'll talk more about that when we get into the PPE sections of the slide. Schools have developed site-specific plans to outline what happens throughout the school day to create a safer learning environment. And your principal and administrators will be sharing those with you this week. Importantly, before you even leave for school in the morning, is to do a self-screening to make sure that you're feeling well and able to come to work to teach the students. Your schools will be sharing that process with you. Secondly, understanding your role in screening students at the beginning of the day. We've issued non-touch thermometers to schools, and so you'll be working with your school staff and administration to make sure that health screening is conducted on each student as they arrive to school. That may be done as they get out of the car, that may be done as they leave the bus, it may be done as they enter the classroom. And so each school has a plan for ensuring that that happens within the first 15 minutes of the day. Now, let's talk a little bit about some of the materials that you'll find in your classroom that you would not find in a typical year. You may find a no-touch thermometer for implementing health screening. Those were purchased this summer and are available, and if you've been up to the school this year during the summer, you've probably had to sign in and get yourself temperature checked. Cloth face masks are also delivered to schools, and there is a supply sufficient to provide one for every staff member and student. Also, face shields for teachers and ed support professionals have been delivered to schools. And those may be useful or something that teachers would consider in certain circumstances or educational settings when a mask is not appropriate. The other items that would be or should be available in your classroom: signage. And I know hopefully you've seen across your school campus that there are signs reminding folks about hand washing, reminding folks about social distancing, and generally helping people understand the ways that they should act and move within the school building. We also have wall-mounted hand sanitizers that were installed this summer, and now it's Monday, the 24th of August, and we are still installing wall-mounted hand sanitizers, so please hang in there with us and we'll get those up for you as the year begins. The second piece is you should recognize that Betco bottle as a hand sanitizer that was placed in your classroom last year. So we'll continue to have that as a source. Encourage students to sanitize before as they come into your room and as they leave the room, and so it will help us all stay safer. The other things that are being provided for you as a classroom teacher would be, one, desktop barriers. Those desktop barriers are three-sided and clear on three sides, and then can be placed either on a student desktop. They can be placed in small group sessions where you might have kidney tables or other round tables that can be partitioned for use, and those would be available. They're actually being delivered to elementary schools starting tomorrow, and a second truckload is coming in at the end of the week. And so I realize that those are not in your classrooms right now, but they are coming and will be available. Each classroom will also receive some surface wipes in those buckets that you see there in the middle, and additionally, a bottle of spray disinfectant. And I want to talk to you about that spray disinfectant for just a moment. It's a food-friendly product that you would be able to spray on a desktop during a class change or as students leave to go to lunch. And the way disinfectants work is they have to sit on a surface for a period of time before they completely disinfect. And so that particular spray disinfectant is not something you would spray on a surface and then wipe dry immediately. And so it requires some thought about when to spray it, and it would sit about 4 minutes, and then it should, based on the manufacturer's guidance, disinfect all surfaces. So it's important that you work with your school staff, administrators, in the proper use of that. Each school classroom will have a supply of gloves as well for your use. Prior to this year, I know that many of you have had students help cleaning in the classroom. They may clean their own materials or clean their desktop. And that's a good practice for students to engage in to make sure that they understand the responsibility of helping to keep a work area clean. This fall, I'm sure there's a little bit more nervousness about having students help to clean their own supplies. If they're working at their own desk and working with their own supplies, it's still appropriate to have them help cleaning. I would certainly make sure that in those situations as a classroom teacher, you're working with the parents to identify that the students might be helping to keep clean their own area and their own belongings and not necessarily other students' belongings. And always be sensitive to the concerns of parents that they might have with issues this particular fall. But certainly if it's worked and discussed with the families, students being able to help keep their own area clean, that would be appropriate. Computers. We've got some information here for you on computers, and many of you have laptops or Chromebooks in your classrooms, and there are computer labs throughout the school. This information came from a Yale Environmental Health and Safety set of guidelines, and so I'm going to provide this to you and not read it through with you, but the information provides guidance on how to clean high-touch electronics. So one of the things we won't want to do with Chromebooks or laptops is spray them down with a liquid spray. The spray can get into the crevices and cracks and cause damage to the computer. So what we'd want to do is use a wipe. You can use either a disinfectant wipe that contains 70% alcohol, or even the wipes that we're providing to you can be used. And those wipes can be used on more than one device as long as they stay damp. It's important, if you have any questions involving the devices in the classroom, to be sure to contact our IT department to get some assistance. And for those teachers who may not be aware, this fall we are moving to a one-to-one device environment with our elementary. K-5, so K-2 will receive iPads, 3-5 will receive Chromebooks. And we've been careful to say throughout the process that that's the direction we're heading. We will not be there the first day of school. Although we did receive a big shipment of iPads in, we will be working to distribute those devices to the school level for one-to-one K-5, and secondary hopefully will keep it going in following years. Your classroom space. Teachers, as you are back into the buildings and looking at your classroom space, the challenge that we all have, and it's a challenge, is to create these environments that are socially distanced as much as possible. So my son's a teacher, starting out for the first time this year in a high school classroom, and we spent some time pulling extra cabinets and bookshelves out of the classroom so that we could spread desks out further. And the challenge is not to get everything 6 feet apart, but provide all the spacing that you can. And then when we combine that with the PPE pieces that we have, the desk barriers that are coming, mask wear, shield, that in all these instances, I think will create layers of protection for our staff and our students. More so at the elementary level and not as much at secondary, as we are sharing devices or sharing supplies. We want to make sure we have a plan in place for cleaning them between uses. Interestingly, when it comes to books, I provided some guidance to the principals on textbooks or library books. And the CDC guidance on cleaning and disinfecting those is that those items are rated very low for transmission of any kind of illness, and they do not recommend any additional cleaning or disinfecting for books, because we certainly wouldn't want to spray them down with a disinfectant. They could ruin them. So that information is likely being shared with you by your principal, but it's important to know. Most important in your classroom are those frequently touched surfaces, multiple students. So if I'm a second grade teacher and I'm self-contained and I have a student sitting at their desk all day and it's not being shared, then it's important to understand that that is not so much a frequently touched surface and may not need to be cleaned as regularly as something at a secondary level where students are changing classes. And again, at a block, in a block schedule where we are in secondary schools, we've got less frequent changing of classes and less frequent sharing of materials. I wanted to also take a minute to step outside the school building and talk a little bit about My School Online. I want all teachers to understand that at this point in time, we have about 7,500 students who have chosen to begin the school year online. That represents about 25% of our student population. In order to provide educational services to those students, we've had a number of teachers do one of two things. Some teachers have chosen or asked to be online full-time. And so we've been able to assign those teachers to these 7,500 students. A second group of teachers has responded to the call of taking not only in-building classes face-to-face, but also My School Online sections. And so you might have a teacher teaching 3 periods in the building and 2 periods outside the building. And in these cases, we've seen teachers demonstrate the ultimate level of flexibility in helping our students achieve. Your school leadership has developed a plan for the safe return to schools for students and staff. The checklist that they've worked through as it relates to things like meals, movement in the hallways, arrival and dismissal, are school specific, and the guidelines of social distancing and cleaning and disinfecting should be maintained throughout the day, throughout the school. Your school principal will be sharing with you specific plans to your site that will help lead to a safe beginning to the school year. And I want to encourage each of you to continue to submit questions to our reopening@okaloosaschools.com email address. Again, reopening@okaloosaschools.com to send questions. Thank you and have a wonderful start to the school year.